What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. I was just looking at Pro Football Focus today. The New York Giants rose all the way to number 18 in offensive line rankings. I've never seen, the last 5 years that we've been doing this show, I have never seen the Giants rank that highly in the weekly offensive line rankings. 18, and they are instantly going to plummet by next weekend because the Giants lost Andrew Thomas. Of course, I did my instant reaction to that yesterday here on the channel, but Alex was unable to join me, so I'm excited to get your take on that, Alex, hear how you're feeling about Andrew Thomas no longer being in the lineup, but I think this is important to highlight. The Giants' offensive line was at a high point that we haven't seen in the last 5 years. And the way that this team is cursed, you just knew when the things were going right on the offensive line, finally they turned it around. Something bad was bound to happen. That's just how it always seems to go for the Giants and their offensive line. And like I said, all the way up to 18, I'm very proud of that. John Michael Schmidt's playing better, Jermaine Illuminor looking great, and Andrew Thomas was listed as best player in this article that ranked them at 18. Now that best player no longer with us. It was confirmed today that he had surgery on his Lisfranc, the bottom of his foot that would be, and he's done for the year. So no Andrew Thomas in the lineup. Josh Azidu will be starting at left tackle according to Brian Dable, and we'll see. They said that they're going to keep Evan Neal practicing at right tackle. No plans to move him to the left side just yet, but hey, if Josh Azidu struggles, plans might change. Maybe Illuminor moves to the left side. Maybe Evan Neal does get back on the field. I know that's going to be part of the topic of conversation here, but first and foremost, Andrew Thomas out of the lineup, Josh Azidu in. Alex, what's your reaction?
Man. Listen, guys, I hate to be pessimistic. I hate to be negative. And I mean, by most people's accounts, this season was probably over already based on the fact we're 2-4 and not really going anywhere. Our season is over. Like, losing Andrew Thomas, losing one of the best left tackles in the game, losing a key component, as you just mentioned, offensive line that is hovering around average, guys. I mean, our pass protection, according to PFF, take out the grain of salt, if you will, is 16th, and that's average, dead average. I would have killed a goat. I would have sacrificed a goat for average this past offseason, guys. And we finally got it. We finally got there, and now our best player in the trenches goes down. Listen, Andrew Thomas is so important to this team. And not just because he's an amazing pass protector, not just because he's an amazing run blocker, but because he protects our quarterback, right? I don't know if you guys remember what happened last year when Andrew Thomas missed some time, but we had Josh Azidu playing left tackle, and you want to know what happened? Like the first game he played, Daniel Jones got hit in the head and ended up having a stinger in his neck and was ruled out for the next 2 games or so, or a couple games, and then he tore his ACL immediately when he returned. Like, this is really, really, really bad. It puts the entire, we've talked a lot about Daniel Jones's injury clause, and if he gets injured and, basically it's for the rest of the season and he fails his March physical, the Giants owe him his entire salary cap for next season. Losing Andrew Thomas increases the probability of an injury happening to him substantially. And that's really hard to kind of wrap your head around, right? At what point do you say, you just can't play Daniel Jones anymore unless the Giants are thinking of utilizing him as a bridge next year? It's a conversation I think we have to have. It's a conversation that many people are talking about. Does this put us in a much more difficult spot? If Daniel Jones starts taking crazy hits because of Josh Azidu, whoever they're playing at left tackle, you have to think about the long-term situation of this team. I think the Giants, they've drafted well enough. I think Brian Dable's job is safe. I think Joe Shane's job is safe based on the way that they've been kind of fighting through some adversity and still performing. I mean, even Carl Banks is talking about how Daniel Jones isn't the guy. I mean, I watched a whole breakdown of Daniel Jones from this past weekend, and all the numbers, all the stats, and and we know this, he's a one-read quarterback. He can't get to his second read, and when he's on target, when he gets to his second read, he's usually on target. The problem is he rarely ever gets there, and it showed up on film multiple times, that 4th and 5 where he misses Wandale. That's a huge miss. It's a massive miss. It ends the game for the Giants, and it forces them to recalibrate after a loss. So, yeah, people will say, well, the kicker should have made a kick. Guys, like, you can't be leaning on kickers to win games all the time. The Giants have leaned on their kickers to win us football games 3 times, and it was our backup kicker every time. This team needs to be scoring touchdowns. And it's not like we don't have enough talent, because we do. I just think that, there's a lot of reasons this team is going in a really weird direction right now, and this season is kind of over already. Like, even I thought it was kind of out teetering on the point of no return before the Andrew Thomas injury. This just kind of cements it. Like, this team is not going to be making a playoff appearance. The team is not going to be doing all these things. I mean, look, there's a 99% chance that's true. There's a one slim, tiny percentage that they can somehow find a way to win and sneak their way in. But listen, the Eagles are a reeling team. They're under fire. They're relatively healthy. They have their primary playmakers, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith are back in the lineup. They have Saquon Barkley coming for vengeance this upcoming weekend. I just don't see how the Giants, pull off this win without Andrew Thomas. Also, Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence missed practice today. Kayvon Thibodeau's gone. He's obviously out. This team is kind of dealing with some major issues right now, and a lot of them are injury related, and this is a frequent kind of situation all the time. So, when you think about the future and what this team has to go forward, Anthony, I don't think Josh Azuda is the best opportunity, the best option for us. I think Jermaine Illuminor is. If they want to protect Daniel Jones, they want to give us a hope, a prayer that they can do anything. I don't think you can give Josh Azuda the keys to the blind side. I think it has to be Jermaine Illuminor. I think I'd rather see Azuda at right tackle. I'd rather see Evan Neal at right tackle. And people that are clamoring about Evan Neal playing left tackle because he did it in college, guys, that is not as easy as people make it sound. You know what I mean? He was a bad right tackle. He has never taken a snap at left tackle in the NFL. He is more than 2 years removed, and multiple injuries, season-ending injuries since then. This is not somebody you want protecting Daniel Jones' blind side. I don't think that it's so as simple as, well, he did it in college. He should do it. He can do it in the NFL. It's not so easy, man. He's been practicing a right tackle for years. To throw him into the mix on the left side is a huge gamble. I'd rather go the safe route and play Illuminor there and have Evan Neal play right tackle if that's the direction we're going to go.
Yeah, Evan Neal did play left tackle in college. He did a lot of things in college, and he hasn't done any of those things in the NFL. He was a good college football player. He hasn't been good at any point in his NFL career. So, yeah, you're right. It's a good point. Like, I get it. I get why Giants fans want to move him to left tackle. It's not truly because, and if you think that it's truly because, it's not. Tell yourself the truth here. It's not because you think that Evan Neal is going to turn his career around at left tackle, or you think he's an upgrade over Josh Azudu. It's because you want him to be. Not because you think he will be, but because you desperately don't want to come to terms with the fact that the Giants missed on the number 7 overall pick in 2022. That's simply what it is. Giants fans are just desperate for him to turn his career around because the Giants had 2 top 10 picks, and neither one of them has lived up to the lofty expectations that was set for them. Kayvon Thibodeau's been good. He hasn't been a superstar. Evan Neal has just been atrocious. That's what that's really boiling down to. And you can't just reasonably assume that because he was the number 7 overall pick and because he was good in college over 3 years ago at this point, can't assume that he's going to turn his career around. The Giants have to be patient with Evan Neal. If he is going to turn it around, if he is going to have a resurgence, it's not just going to be because they threw him into the lineup in a really difficult situation, made him the replacement to Andrew Thomas when Andrew Thomas got hurt. That's not how an Evan Neal career turnaround happens. An Evan Neal career turnaround happens because he recovered from this ankle injury. He stayed behind the scenes for the first 6+ weeks of the season, practicing at right tackle, honing in on his craft with a great offensive line coach, Carmen Bristow, and eventually waited patiently, got his opportunity down the line. Forcing him into the lineup when he's unprepared is not how you get the career turnaround for Evan Neal. So if we're going to talk about Evan Neal, we're going to talk about him getting in the lineup, it's not going to be this week. It's going to be down the road when an opening at right tackle happens, whether that be because Jermaine Illuminor moved over to the left side or if Jermaine Illuminor does get injured, which, knock on wood, pray to God that doesn't happen, because if it does this season, if you thought it was off the rails now, it's going to look like the scene from Super 8, if any of you have seen that movie when the train crashes in to the train stop. That was ridiculous. That's what the season is going to look like if Jermaine Illuminor happens to go down. So I actually got to bring this up with you, Alex. The loss of Andrew Thomas has a severe effect. You mentioned the effect that it's going to have on Daniel Jones and a lot of these other players. I got another one for you. It's going to severely affect the impact that the tight ends are able to make. And that's what really sucks. Because we've been seeing strides from Theo Johnson over the last few weeks, right? I mean, we talked about him in, I think, week 2 or 3 and said he doesn't look like an NFL player sometimes. Like, he looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. And then the following 3 weeks, right after we said that, maybe he was listening to Fireside Giants and it lit a fire under him. He started playing a lot better, started getting some receptions. But now, with no true left tackle in the lineup, Josh Azudu needing to plug in, the Giants are going to be forced to do what they did last season. Make their tight end an extra offensive lineman on nearly every single snap. And that absolutely sucks. The Giants, because they had a decent starting 5 offensive line through the first 6 weeks, were actually able to allow their tight ends to play tight end rather than offensive tackle. Now that Andrew Thomas is out of the lineup, well, get back to learning chip block, buddy. That's what Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson are going to have to do. They're just going to have to chip and then release. And that's going to really suck. Alex, what are your thoughts on that? Again, there's so many different ways that this affects the offense. It affects the Giants' abilities to run half of their playbook probably, but it also affects the tight ends and their ability to really make an impact in the receiving game.
Absolutely. Well, you're talking about generating explosive plays. You can kiss those goodbye too, because this offensive line, especially at left tackle now, is not going to be able to hold up. Daniel Jones is going to have to get the ball out of his hands much faster than he has been, and so deep passing game didn't exist before, not going to exist now. I guess we're not really skipping a beat in that sense, but it's not even a threat anymore. But from the tight end's perspective, yeah, you're going to have a guy chipping on the left side pretty much all the time now. And that takes a huge piece of your offense away. And, that forces you to shrink the field. That forces you defensive backs not to have to allocate attention to another guy. Like, you're talking about Brian Dable getting creative. This is if Brian Dable's job isn't safe right now, this is maybe where he saves his job. Like, showing how creative he can get to move the football despite losing Andrew Thomas. I'm expecting a lot of screens. I'm expecting, a lot of Tyrone Tracy in the receiving game. I'm expecting, some late delayed releases from the tight ends, get them involved in the passing game. Maybe Theo Johnson's role actually expands in this a little bit. I think Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be heavily used, even more so than he already has been. That's kind of where I sit right now. I think like the short passing game is going to be a much more important factor. So, whether I know Malik Neighbors is trying to play, I think they actually just reported that Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns are going to be playing this weekend. So at least we'll have those two guys ready to go. But offensively, yeah, like I mean, this unit's going to be strapped even more than it was. Wan'Dale in the short concepts going to be more of a key component. Malik Neighbors on short concepts makes a lot more sense. I wouldn't be surprised to see more like bubble screens to him and stuff like that. This is going to be a little bit of a different offense moving forward because you can't trust your left tackle. But I do think that Jermaine Illuminor should be the guy. I do think they should change his position. I know they want to maintain as much continuity as possible, but they're compromising Daniel Jones' health by putting Josh Ezeudu there. Unless they have a lot of faith in him, I simply do not. I'll say this, Anthony. I'll say this. Give Ezeudu one game. One game. If he does not look like he can play the part, you have to move Illuminor there. But if he holds his own and he shows that he can at least play competent football, then maybe you stay the course and you just kind of ride with that and hope for the best. I just don't know how much he could have developed in less than a year. With Carmen Brasillo, seemingly everyone's taken big steps forward. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that at least assumes that Ezeudu's going to show up and be a better player than he was. He shouldn't have been playing last year, and he shouldn't be playing this year. But at least he's been sitting, learning, watching, growing, refining his fundamentals, and preparing instead of his confidence being demoralized every single time he steps on the football field. So one game, I'm willing to give him that, but if it's not good, you got to move Illuminor over to left tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but a lot of fans are saying, and you mentioned at the beginning of this, like, putting Ezeudu out there at left tackle is just a bad idea, and they should be going with Illuminor. I actually kind of disagree. I think that Josh Ezeudu, there's an element to this where we've only seen what we've seen on game day fields, right? We saw that last year. We don't see what happens at practices. It is possible that Ezeudu's taken major strides since being coached by Carmen Brasillo, and I have to just give the head coach the benefit of the doubt in this situation. If Brian Dable thinks that the best player to move to left tackle in place of Andrew Thomas is Josh Ezeudu, then screw it. You try that out. If you're wrong, Brian Dable, you got to be quick to make the change. That's kind of the whole thing here, right, Alex? I've mentioned this a few times on this show. You've got to hire slowly and fire quickly. That's how the Giants need to play this. That's how they should have played the Daniel Jones situation. That's not how they're playing it. So, that's a whole can of worms. But in this case, hire slowly. Take your time to pick who is the next left tackle. They haven't done that so far because they immediately just announced it was Josh Ezeudu. And then fire quickly. So meaning short leash. If Josh Ezeudu struggles, you just take him out of lineup, you put somebody else in. I also do wonder if the Giants are going to try and go out there and sign somebody off of a practice squad potentially. I know Tyree Phillips is a player who's given them some quality snaps in the past. He's a decent backup. He's been on the Giants practice squad, other practice squads. I think he's available for the signing. Wouldn't be shocked if the Giants went ahead and added him to the lineup, although I think he plays more right tackle than left tackle. But at least it gives you depth if you need to move Illuminor to the left side. Now you have Tyree Phillips. He can potentially step in at right tackle if you still don't feel comfortable putting Evan Neal in the lineup. So I think there's going to be some sort of roster move for the Giants. I think they have to add somebody to the active 53 and bring on some sort of offensive tackle depth. But yeah, back to the Ezeudu point, Alex. This is a player who we had expectations for one day to become a starter. But the thing is, when the Giants drafted him in the third round of the 2022 draft, we had expectations for him to become a starter at guard. We never saw him as a tackle. And we watched his film. I think we watched it on the channel. I think we did a film breakdown and we looked at him and we were like, yeah, he's got good feet. He's great in the running game. That's a great guard right there. And the Giants have just shoehorned him into this left tackle position. It never made sense to me. It still doesn't. But here we are. He's going to be the starting left tackle. So I agree with you. Short leash. He's been practicing behind the scenes. He has earned the opportunity to get back onto the field as a starter. He has done that. But if he struggles, you just can't risk your future here with the quarterback and his injury clause. So you'll have to take him out of the lineup ASAP if that's the case. But there is another element to this, Alex, where maybe Illuminor doesn't want to play left tackle. He is having a career resurgence at right tackle. Like he was good last year with Las Vegas. He's been one of the best pass protecting tackles in the NFL this year with the New York Giants. It is totally possible that Illuminor tells him, hell freaking no. I signed this contract to play right side of the line, to play right tackle. That's where I want to play. Because let's face it, Alex, Illuminor and the way that he's playing, he is earning himself a payday. He signed a 2-year, $14 million contract. If he were to continue playing this way at right tackle through the rest of this season and next, that next contract is absolutely pushing over $10 million on annual salary. It's probably reaching at least $15 million in annual salary. So if I were Jermaine Illuminor, I would be like, hell no, I am not moving to the left side of the line. I am having the career year that I've always dreamed of right here at right tackle in the Big Apple. I am staying at the right tackle position. So that is something that maybe the Giants don't need to consider because at the end of the day, they call the shots. They sign the players to play and they put them where they want to play them. But I don't know. There might be some resistance on the part of Jermaine Illuminor. I'm not saying necessarily that he's going to be selfish about it. He's so for the team. He's a great character, and I think that he'll do whatever he needs to do to help the team win. But from that perspective, he probably wants to stay at right tackle, and the Giants are also probably like, man, we paid him to play right tackle. He is living up to that contract and then some. Maybe not the best idea to move him and risk him hurting his play and then losing his consistency, because that's also a possibility if you move him to the left side of the line. We talk a lot about how difficult that is to do, to flip sides of the line, and how that might be the reason why Evan Neal struggled so much once he entered the league. Well, we also have to say it might be really difficult for Illuminor to flip over to the left side of the line if the Giants ask him to. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this thing goes for the Giants. They've got a lot of options. None of them are super attractive, but we'll see how they end up faring this upcoming weekend against the Eagles. Hopefully we can surprise some people and get that win, because like I've said, a piece of me dies every time we lose to the Philadelphia Eagles. Truly is the case. But Alex, any closing thoughts here on this offensive line as the Giants kind of retool and reshape following the loss of Andrew Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is where your coaching shines through. This is where Carmen Basil's got to show, even more than he has. And this guy's been a godsend to the Giants so far. And building a unit, has his work behind the scenes with guys like Azidu, guys like Evan Neal. Is it going to be productive? Is it going to show itself in a positive light? That's what we're going to find out this upcoming weekend. But listen, Andrew Thomas's loss is devastating. It probably finishes our season before it even starts. Into week 7. I mean, our season was already kind of in the gutter, but this really puts us in a really difficult spot to keep going and even be competitive. But with that being said, it doesn't look like these guys are backing down. These guys are backing down from a fight, and the defense is still really, really good. The Giants offense, I mean, listen, they scored 7 points with Andrew Thomas, and I know he was injured for some of that game, but they haven't been necessarily a great offense with him. That's not an indication that he's been playing poorly. It's more of an indication that we can't generate explosive plays. We've gone through this 100 times. We know the spiel already. It just comes to Daniel Jones making plays. Can he lift up his team? This is, if you're a Daniel Jones guy and you think he still has it, can Daniel Jones step up and lift this team up and demand better and make the big throws and make the open throws? Can he do all those things and make this team better? I mean, so far we've seen glimpses, but I wouldn't say consistency. Far from it. Flashes in the pan, but nothing certainly of a consistent nature, and that's kind of where we all draw the line. It's like 1 week is great, 2 weeks are good, 3 weeks are good, the 4th week's horrible, the 5th week is bad, the 6th week is bad, glimpses again in week 7, and then you know what I mean? Like this, it's just the experiment and the experience of Daniel Jones, the lack of consistency. It sucks. It's just reality for us right now. We got to survive it. But, the season certainly isn't going the way we wanted to. We didn't really expect it to go. Actually, Anthony, I go as far as to say we actually are getting a little bit more than we thought at times this past offseason. The defense has been way better than we thought it would be. The offensive line has been way better. Malik Neighbors has been way better. I think this team is actually situated to turn things around pretty quickly next year if they find the right pieces. But again, it's about finding the right pieces, and that's easier said than done.
Like a quarterback. The Giants really are. I think if anything's been proven through the first 6 weeks of the season, the Giants have proven that they are a quarterback away in many different ways. And that's not to say that they're a quarterback away from being some juggernaut Super Bowl contending team. Daniel Jones is not the only problem with this team. There are many problems, but I think we have to all recognize and accept that some of these games, the primetime games in particular, the divisional games that Daniel Jones just doesn't rise to the occasion to, if you had a quarterback with a little bit more of cold blood, I think the Giants probably win those games. And so, yeah, you could argue that they are a quarterback away. You could also argue that they aren't. I don't care. I don't have a horse in the race. Whatever you guys feel. All I know is Sunday versus the Eagles, if the Giants don't win, I'm going to be depressed. And you're probably going to hear a lot of shouting and probably some cursing as well on a parental advisory flash on the channel. If the Giants end up losing to the Eagles, you can expect me to not be in a very good mood. But that'll about do this one. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Giants.